My name is Emma, and I never thought I'd be back in this neighborhood. The familiar sight of maple trees lining Elm Street made my heart race as I stepped out of my rental car. 3 years. It had been 3 years since I left Chicago, since I walked away from everything I thought I knew about love and family. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and that distinctive Chicago wind that seemed to cut right through you. I pulled my coat tighter and looked up at the 2-story brick house that had haunted my dreams for so long. The same white picket fence, the same rose bushes that Mrs. Henderson next door had always been so proud of, and the same front porch where I'd spent countless summer evenings. I wasn't supposed to be here. My plan was simple: drive through the old neighborhood, maybe grab some closure, and head back to my new life in Seattle. But as I stood there, memories flooded back like a dam breaking. The laughter, the arguments, the promises we made under the starlit sky on that very porch. Taking a deep breath, I walked up the familiar stone pathway. Each step felt heavier than the last. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the doorbell, but before I could press it, the door swung open. Emma? There he was, Jake, my ex-fiancé, the man I'd left at the altar 3 years ago. He looked older, more mature somehow. His dark hair was shorter now, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But those green eyes, those were exactly the same. They still held that mixture of warmth and mischief that had first drawn me to him in college. "Hi, Jake," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, neither of us knowing what to say. The silence stretched between us like an invisible wall built from years of hurt and unanswered questions. "What are you doing here?" he finally asked, his voice careful, guarded. Before I could answer, a voice called from inside the house. "Jake, who's at the door?" I recognized that voice immediately. Henry Morrison, Jake's grandfather. The man who had been more of a father to Jake than his own dad ever was. The man who had welcomed me into their family with open arms and taught me how to make his famous apple pie. It's Emma, Grandpa," Jake called back, never taking his eyes off me. I heard the sound of shuffling footsteps, and then there he was, Henry, now in his 80s, moving slowly but with the same dignified presence I remembered. His silver hair was thinner now, and he leaned heavily on a wooden cane, but his eyes were as sharp and kind as ever. "Emma, dear," he said, his face breaking into a smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "What a wonderful surprise." Unlike Jake, Henry didn't seem shocked or uncomfortable. He moved forward and embraced me gently, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. This man had been a grandfather to me too, and I had missed him more than I'd allowed myself to admit. "Hello, Henry," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You look well." "Oh, you know me," he chuckled, patting my arm. "Too stubborn to let old age slow me down completely. But look at you. You look beautiful, dear. Seattle's been treating you well, I see." I nodded, grateful for his warmth in the face of Jake's obvious discomfort. "Please, come in," Henry continued, already turning back toward the house. "I was just making some tea. We have so much to catch up on." I glanced at Jake, who was still standing frozen in the doorway. His jaw was tight, and I could see the conflict playing out in his expression. Part of him wanted to slam the door, I was sure, but he would never be rude in front of his grandfather. "I don't want to impose," I said quietly. "Nonsense," Henry waved dismissively. "This is your home too, Emma. It always has been." The words hit me like a physical blow. This had been my home once. Jake and I had lived here with Henry for the last 2 years of our relationship, saving money for our wedding while taking care of the man who had raised Jake after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12. As we settled into the familiar living room, I couldn't help but notice how little had changed. The same burgundy leather couch where Jake and I used to watch movies on Sunday afternoons. The same family photos on the mantelpiece, though I noticed there were several new ones. Pictures of Jake with people I didn't recognize. Smiling faces at what looked like weddings and graduation parties. Henry bustled around making tea, despite my offers to help. Sit, he insisted. "You're our guest." Jake remained standing near the window, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. The tension in the room was palpable, and I found myself studying the familiar pattern of the Persian rug beneath my feet, anything to avoid his gaze. "So," Henry said, as he finally settled into his favorite armchair, "what brings you back to Chicago? Are you here for long?" I took a sip of tea, buying myself time. "I'm here for a work conference downtown. It ends tomorrow, and I guess I just wanted to see the old neighborhood. It was partially true. There was a conference, but I'd flown in 2 days early specifically to work up the courage for this moment. I'd been sitting in my hotel room for 48 hours, debating whether to drive by the house. And how is Seattle? Henry continued, seeming genuinely interested. I imagine it's quite different from Chicago. It is, I said, grateful for the safe topic. The mountains are beautiful, and the coffee scene is incredible. I'm working at a marketing firm now, focusing on sustainable brands. That sounds wonderful, Henry smiled. You always were passionate about making a difference. Jake made a noise that might have been a scoff, and I felt my cheeks burn. He'd always teased me about my idealism, but there had been affection in it once. Now it just sounded bitter. What about you, Jake? I asked, finally looking at him directly. What are you doing these days? He turned from the window, his expression guarded. I'm still at the architectural firm. Made partner last year, actually. That's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. Jake had always been brilliant at his work, had big dreams about designing sustainable housing for low-income families. Are you still working on the affordable housing project? His expression softened slightly. Yeah, actually. We broke ground on the first phase last month. 60 units, all energy efficient, with a community garden and shared spaces. For a moment, the years fell away. I could see the passion in his eyes, the same fire that had drawn me to him in the first place. Jake had always been a dreamer, but unlike most dreamers, he had the skills and determination to make his visions reality. I'm proud of you, I said quietly, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or pain. Henry had been watching our exchange with interest, and now he cleared his throat gently. Emma, dear, I hope you'll forgive an old man's curiosity, but I have to ask, are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Not, are you married? Or, are you seeing anyone? But simply, are you happy? I considered lying, giving the easy answer. But this was Henry, and he'd always been able to see right through me. I'm content, I said finally. I have good friends, work that I enjoy, a nice apartment with a view of the Sound. Content, Henry repeated thoughtfully. That's not the same as happy, is it? Before I could answer, Jake spoke up. Grandpa, I don't think... It's okay, I interrupted. He's right. Content isn't the same as happy, but sometimes content is enough. Henry studied me for a long moment, and I felt like he was seeing all the way into my soul. You know, Emma, I've lived 83 years on this earth, and I've learned that sometimes the things that scare us most are the things we need most. I felt tears threaten again. Henry, I know, dear, he said gently. I know why you left, and I know why you came back. Jake looked between us, confusion clear on his face. What are you talking about? Henry set down his teacup with a soft clink. Your grandmother came to see me, Jake, about a month before the wedding. My heart stopped. Emma's grandmother, my grandmother, had been the one person I'd confided in about my fears, my doubts, my terror that I was making a mistake by getting married so young. She was worried about Emma, Henry continued. Said she'd never seen her so scared, so overwhelmed. She asked me to talk to you, to maybe suggest postponing the wedding. Jake's face went pale. You never said anything. Because I was a foolish old man who thought love would conquer all, Henry said sadly. I thought if I just stayed out of it, you two would work it out. Instead, I watched two people I love destroy each other. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like every secret I'd tried to bury was now laid bare. You were scared? Jake asked quietly, looking at me with something I couldn't quite identify. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Of what? Of everything, I whispered. Of being a wife at 25, when I felt like I was still figuring out who I was. Of losing myself in trying to be the person everyone wanted me to be. Jake sank down onto the couch, his face in his hands. You could have talked to me. Could we? I asked. Jake, you had it all planned out. The wedding, the timeline for kids, the house we'd buy. It was a beautiful plan, but it was your plan. I felt like I was just along for the ride. He looked up at me, hurt in his eyes. I thought we were building that life together. We were, I said, but I stopped feeling like I had a voice in it. Henry watched us both with sad, knowing eyes. Communication, he said softly. It's the foundation of everything. I thought about the morning of our wedding. I'd woken up surrounded by my bridesmaids, feeling like I was drowning. I'd looked at my wedding dress and felt nothing but panic. I wrote you a letter, I said quietly. Did you ever read it? Jake nodded. About 100 times, but I never understood it. I was scared that if I married you, I'd disappear, I explained. That I'd become just Jake's wife and lose Emma completely. It doesn't sound selfish, he interrupted. It sounds terrified. We sat in silence for a moment. I was angry for a long time, Jake admitted. Angry that you left, angry that you couldn't trust me enough to talk to me. I did want it, I said quickly. I wanted to marry you, but I also wanted to be me, and I didn't know how to do both. Henry leaned forward. Emma, dear, can I ask you something? In Seattle, in your new life, are you still you? The question hit me like a lightning bolt. In Seattle, I was completely myself. I'd built a life from scratch, made decisions based on what I wanted. I was more myself than I'd ever been, but I was also lonely. So incredibly lonely. Yes, I whispered. I'm me, but I'm also alone. And is that what you wanted? Henry asked gently. I felt tears spill over. I don't know anymore. I looked at Jake. I've missed you every single day for 3 years. Jake's expression crumbled. Emma, I know I hurt you, I continued. I was so scared of losing myself that I lost you instead, and I've regretted it every day since. You didn't lose me, Jake said quietly. You left me. I know, and I'm sorry. Henry stood up slowly. I think I'll go make some more tea. You two need to talk. As his footsteps faded toward the kitchen, Jake and I were left alone. I dated someone for a while, Jake said suddenly. Sarah. She was nice, uncomplicated. The words stung, but I deserved them. Are you still? No. We broke up 6 months ago. Turns out I'm not very good at loving someone who isn't you. I felt my heart shatter and mend at the same time. I need to know something, he said, his voice intense. Are you here because you're curious about what might have been, or are you here because you want to try again? I took a shaky breath. I'm here because I realized that running away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. I've spent 3 years becoming the person I needed to be, and now I want to see if we can build something new together. Jake stared at me for a long moment. You can't just come back after 3 years and expect everything to be the same. I don't, I replied quickly. I'm not the same person who left, and I'm guessing you're not either. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Tell me about Seattle, he said finally. Tell me about the person you became. So I did. I told him about my job, the causes I'd gotten involved with, the friends I'd made. I told him about the art classes, the hiking trips, the volunteer work. I told him about the life I'd built from nothing. You sound happy when you talk about it, Jake observed. I am happy with who I've become, I admitted, but I'm not happy with who I'm becoming it with. Does that make sense? He nodded slowly. I think so. I've been happy with my work, with the life I've built here, but there's been this Emma-shaped hole that I couldn't fill with anything else. Just then, Henry returned with fresh tea. I hope you don't mind, he said with a twinkle in his eye. I may have been eavesdropping a little. Grandpa, Jake said, you never were subtle. At my age, subtlety is overrated, Henry replied. Life's too short to dance around the truth. He looked at both of us seriously. I want to tell you something. When your grandmother was alive, we separated once for almost a year. This was news to me. I'd never heard this story before. We were young, stubborn, and we thought we knew everything, Henry continued. She moved to California. I stayed here. We were both too proud to admit we'd made a mistake. What brought you back together? I asked. She got sick, Henry said simply. Nothing serious, just the flu. But she was alone and scared. I was on the next plane to Los Angeles. When I saw her there, pale and small, I realized that being right wasn't worth being without her. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. We talked for 3 days straight, about everything we'd done wrong, everything we'd been afraid to say. And we realized that the people we'd become during that year apart were actually better partners for each other. So you got back together? Jake asked. We started over, Henry corrected. New promises, new understanding, new respect for who we each were as individuals. It was the best decision we ever made. I felt tears streaming down my face. Jake reached over and took my hand, and I felt electricity shoot through me at the contact. Emma, I need you to know something, Jake said. I've realized that you were right about a lot of things. I was so focused on the plan that I forgot to listen to your concerns, and I should have stayed and worked through it with you instead of running away. I replied. So what do we do now? Jake asked. I looked around the room, at the photos on the mantle, at Henry watching us with hopeful eyes, at Jake's hand in mine. I don't know, I admitted. I live in Seattle now. I have a job, an apartment, a life there. And I have my practice here, my commitments, Jake said. We can't just pretend 3 years didn't happen. No, I agreed. But maybe we can see if the people we are now can build something that the people we were then couldn't. Henry clapped his hands together. Well, I think that calls for a celebration. Emma, dear, you're staying for dinner, I hope? Before I could answer, Jake squeezed my hand. Please stay. We have a lot to figure out, but maybe we can start with one dinner. I looked at these two men who had been my family once, who felt like home in a way that nothing in Seattle ever had, and I nodded. I'd like that very much. As Henry shuffled off to start cooking, Jake and I sat together on the couch, hands still intertwined. This is crazy, I said softly. Completely insane, Jake agreed, but maybe the best things are. So what's the plan? I asked, then immediately laughed at my own question. Sorry, I know you love your plans. Jake grinned. Actually, I was thinking maybe we could try something new. Maybe we could not have a plan. Maybe we could just see what happens. Jake Morrison suggesting we wing it? I teased. Are you feeling all right? I'm feeling like maybe it's time to try a different approach, he said seriously. Maybe this time we take it slow, really get to know each other again, figure out if we can make this work without losing ourselves. I nodded, feeling hope bloom in my chest for the first time in years. I'd like that very much. As we sat there, watching the sun set through the familiar windows, I realized that sometimes the best journeys are the ones that bring you back to where you started, but as a different person. I'd left Chicago as a scared girl who didn't know who she was. I was coming back as a woman who did. Whether Jake and I could make it work remained to be seen, but for the first time in 3 years, I was excited to find out. The smell of Henry's cooking began to fill the house, and I smiled. Some things, the best things, never really change, and sometimes that's exactly what you need to build something entirely new.